Well, Brody, I thought it was going to be a bit longer before we did a basketball video. And I thought it was the circumstances and tone were going to be a little bit different, but some news has broke
Mhm.
today that we've just got to get into for the OU men's basketball team. And we've got to get into that news and just the overall state of the roster. That's what we're here to do on the latest episode of In the Paint, basketball video series fueled by OU Insider and the Rivals Network. I'm Jesse Crittenden. I'm joined as always by Brody Lusk. And Brody, the last time we did one of these, it was a few weeks ago. It was just a few
Yep.
days after the season ended, and it was a little bit doom and gloom then too. But
Mhm. Mhm.
good lord, so much has happened since then. And obviously, just a few minutes ago, you had the story. Kaden Cooper is entering the portal on the last day of the portal window.
Buzzer
And
beater.
Brody, I'll let you react first before I give my thoughts. But I think Kaden Cooper entering the portal is news enough to warrant a video. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
But before I get into my thoughts, just where what's your reaction? Where's your head at?
Yeah, it's not a loss of production, it's a loss of potential. And I think everyone knows the amount of potential that Caden Cooper had. He played against TCU. It was only 3 points, 4 rebounds, but he looked good for someone who hadn't played in conference play all year. So to lose Caden Cooper with an already thin roster of guys coming back, I mean, right now, the only three players that had roles that, should be back next year are Jalen Moore, Sam Godwin, and Luke Northweather. You lose Caden Cooper, and you're returning less than you returned, last year. So to me, it hurts to lose a guy like Cooper that had as much potential as he had. Not to mention the fact that he was originally from Ada, Oklahoma. So you're losing an in-state guy who wanted to play at Oklahoma, and it's just rough. Like it hurts to lose someone with that much potential.
I just got to say, and I said this to you um, before we started recording, but outside of Jalen Moore actually leaving, this is the
Hmm.
one thing. This is the one thing you can't have happen if you're Porter Moser and this staff. With with everyone that you're losing heading into the SEC, you've missed on really most of your top portal targets. You
Yeah.
can't. This can't happen. It just can't.
Hmm.
And you're right. Look, Caden Cooper didn't play very much last year. I think there was clamoring, including from me, that he deserved a
Hmm.
much bigger role. But I just you mentioned the fact that he's an Oklahoma kid, all that stuff. This really, and I think in some ways, is kind of the closing chapter on what was a weird year for him at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It was a question at Porter Moser several times throughout the year. Where's Caden Cooper at? Where's his development? Is he working towards getting time on the floor? I don't know, Brody. I think there's so many angles to digest this, but it just, for one reason or another, and yeah, like Jacob Cole redshirted, didn't see any time. Caden Cooper did play spot minutes in a few games. It didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like there wasn't a real way for him to get on the floor last year, no matter how good he looked. And it sounds like even with everything everybody OU is losing, there wasn't really an immediate pathway for playing time next year. Is that surprising given that he's 6'5", athletic, and has a ton
Yeah.
of potential?
Yeah. I mean, you talk with people, who watched him at high school playing on the URB or the Adidas circuit. They'll tell you that he was the best shot blocking wing that they'd ever seen come through that circuit. So it is surprising just because of the physical tools that he has, and he wasn't he wasn't very polished offensively last year, but defensively he has the athleticism that you would think like Porter Moser would like that. And you would think maybe that this season he would have, they would have said, okay, we have a role for you. But Caden Cooper, had he came back, would have been coming off the bench, and Caden Cooper, it's unclear how much he would have played then. So it to me, it's a bit surprising. Just because I mean, I wrote a whole column on him in January about why I thought he should have played. He should have been added into the rotation. So yeah, I just the tools that he has, and his 3-point shot was the biggest question. But in the TCU game, he took a three and drilled it. So just with someone with that much athleticism and that much talent, man, it's surprising to see him not be able to get on the floor ahead of Max Kleinschek, and two, next season you're losing a ton of guys, and he's not really a huge part of your plans.
And to me, entering so late in the portal window, and I know we talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
that just suggested to me leaving was not his first choice. That's not
Mm-mm.
leaving is not what he is. That was not his main objective heading into the offseason.
Yeah.
So to me, is that conversations with the coaching staff? Is that portal additions that have been made? Did it just become clear to him that a substantial role was just not going to be
Yeah.
likely next year?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it became clear that a substantial role wasn't going to be likely. And they're wanting to add experience. You've seen that in all three of their portal additions. All three of them only have 1 year of eligibility left. They're looking for experience. They do have, a few young guys now. And they really like Jacob Cole. He's progressed really well. And he's a three, and Kaden Cooper is probably a three with how the way they're building the roster. And so, then Cooper would have been battling with Cole for a little bit of a role on next year's roster. So, I think he just realized how clear it was, and entering late in the portal is never a great thing because so many schools have already filled up their roster and got their spots. So it's never ideal, but for Cooper, it never would have been ideal. But yeah, I just think it became clear to him, and you can kind of see it. I mean, he was one of the guys who was kind of on social media making pitches to Brandon Garrison, and he'd followed Kobe Elvis, liked his stuff, but then that just kind of stopped within past the last week. So it just seems like he really realized he saw the writing on the wall.
I was going to say, when did this? I mean, I don't want to ask you to speculate too much, or at all, but I mean, when did this become not only a possibility but a reality? Is this something that the rumbling started a few weeks ago, or is this something that's really ramped up in the last couple days, last few days?
Yeah, the
Or
last
is this
24
just
to
or
48 hours.
is this just a surprise, like all the way around?
I'd say the last 24 hours. That's it. All the other portal entries, you had an idea probably a week before, and this one, I talked with a couple sources who, Kaden Cooper was like, there was no thought of him leaving until recently, like very recently. So yeah, definitely surprised. If you would have asked me last week, I would have said no. Oklahoma has no more portal entries coming, but hey, that's the portal.
Well, I think two things. This really, above all else, this has made me think of a couple of things. One, I remember last off season when the season ended. I think the goal was you have to find a way to keep Milo Suzanne and Otega away. Those are your building blocks. Those are
Yep,
guys.
yep.
Those are young guys. Those are guys that have seen the floor. They've played. And if you're Porter Moser trying to build a culture, you're trying to build something where there's some semblance of carryover from one year to the next. Those are the two guys you got to keep. I think Kaden Cooper was in a similar boat here because it's not only about cohesion and carryover and all those things, but I think it's young guys buying into the vision of the program, being in lockstep with the coaching staff. Not only does this coaching staff, it just doesn't happen. Kaden Cooper's in the portal, but I think you run the risk of lowering the morale even further with this fan base. And I think you're already
Oh
seeing the
yeah.
reaction that the coach, Porter Moser's has a mixed, I think
I wouldn't even
base has
say
a mixed.
mixed.
Yeah. Maybe I'm probably being too nice.
Yeah, being mixed is too nice.
This isn't going to help in that regard. It just isn't.
No.
This isn't going to help
Yeah.
drum up
I mean,
enthusiasm.
Yeah, this one, as far as like what I've seen on Twitter, there has not been one close to this as far as portal injuries that have had, the mentions going as crazy as they are. Like, when they missed on Padula, it wasn't this bad. When they missed on Garrison, it wasn't this bad. I think to me, you miss on Kevin Overton, which to be fair, his high school coach was at Texas Tech. So you kind of get it. You miss on John Padula, you miss on Brandon Garrison, and then you lose Kaden Cooper. It's just all kind of like it just hurts.
So let's use this to zoom out to OU's offseason as a whole. And I just
Yeah.
look, they've added Jaden Jones, they've added Bryson Goodine, and they've added Kobe Elvis.
Yeah.
I think those are three guys. I think those are solid additions. Look, they bring length,
Mm-hmm.
they bring athleticism, they can all shoot, or they all have
Shooting.
a decent track
Yeah.
record of shooting. They all have experience. Nothing wrong with those additions. I think those are solid additions. I mean, right? I mean, I guess before we talk about other stuff, I guess those three additions. What do you make of those three additions?
Look, I like Jaden Jones a lot. Um, he's a really good 3-and-D guy, but he's not going to be the feature player on the team. I think Kobe Elvis could be a really, solid secondary ball handler. I think he will be. My prediction is that he might be a little up and down throughout the year, but he can shoot. You always want to have shooting, and the same can be said for Goodine. I like the way both those guys can shoot, and I like the way Jaden Jones defends and shoots. But you don't have someone who's going to be a bucket getter. Like none of those guys, to me, if you're saying, "Hey, we need someone to get a bucket," it's really not any of those guys, and that's no discredit to them. That's just not their game. So to get the most potential out of Kobe Elvis, out of Jaden Jones, and out of Bryson Goodine, they have to find a lead guard. They have to, and it's getting kind of thin in the portal, and they've got to find a center. I think if they can get a lead guard, and they're going to run a lot through Jalen Moore, then those guys as role players are not bad additions at all. Quite frankly, I would consider them very solid additions for role players. But it's like right now they got to find the two biggest needs for them in the portal are a lead guard and a center. They have to hit on those, or else, I think it'll be really ugly.
No, I agree with you. Look, those are good supporting players that they've added in the portal. And I think
Yeah.
if this coaching staff had the big splash and then these three guys
Mm-hmm.
around them, then I think you feel good, right? Or a
Yeah.
big splash or two,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then you get
Yeah.
these three guys, then that feels good. But then that's when you zoom out to, man, missing out on Sean Padula and Brandon Garrison. And you mentioned Kevin Overton, but those two guys, I mean, missing out on
Yeah.
both those guys. I think if you were Oklahoma, you were surely hoping you were landing at least one of them, right? I, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know,
That was I talked to someone who's yeah.
oh, sorry, I may have lost you for a
Yeah,
second.
I talked to someone who said it's something. Okay, are we good?
Apologize for the technical delays or the technical difficulties. But anyways, yeah, so I think if you're Oklahoma, you were hoping to get at least one of those guys, right? I mean, I think missing out on both of them really hurts. It just does.
Yeah, I talked with someone, at the beginning of the portal season when it was Kevin Overton, Brandon Garrison, and Sean Padula as the top three targets, and they were like, it's something special about getting in-state guys to come play for Oklahoma, and then you miss on all three of those guys, and you lose another in-state guy today in Kaden Cooper. So it went from, man, you could potentially have multiple guys from Oklahoma on that roster. Now it's just Dayton Forsyth and Sam Godwin. So it hurts to miss on the guys they've missed on. And I think the guys they've got are solid, but just to miss on who they've missed, it just stings.
It does. And here's the thing. Look, it's not that Dayton Forsyth, I think we both agree has a ton of potential.
Yeah,
I think he's
yeah.
going to be really good. Cool attack. I think a ton of potential. He's length, athleticism. Like Luke Northweather, if he can put it together, I think could be a solid player. Sam Godwin is a productive player. Um, but I just Jacob Cole obviously
Yeah.
has a lot of potential as a
Yeah.
young guy. So it's not like everything is hopeless, but and it's not like they haven't done anything. Those three guys that they've added are decent transfer guys, but Brody, I think in some ways, some of this offseason so far, it looks like they're keeping on to Jalen Moore, but I think in some ways, and Jalen Moore is going to be. I mean, Jalen Moore was him and Rivaldo Soares were the best players on last year's team by the end of the year. Keeping Jalen Moore is a big deal, but it feels like in some ways this offseason has been in some ways a worst case scenario for this coaching
Oh,
staff. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. There's not really a way to sugarcoat it. It's just it's been worst case scenario. Like you want to everything they've kind of like okay, let's get Sean Padula, let's get Brandon Garrison, and it just falls through and falls through. And I also think kind of like the way they missed out on Brandon Garrison to go to Kentucky after not even taking a visit to Kentucky. Like Kentucky wasn't a school that was mentioned until the night before he decided to make a commitment. To lose him like that, and then to lose Kaden Cooper on the day before the portal, actually the day of the portal closes because it closes tonight. It, there's just no way. Like that is a worst case scenario.
So where do you go from here if you're this coaching staff? Because I mean, they clearly they not only have real needs as in terms of backcourt depth and a big man, they still have scholarship spots to fill, and the portal window is closing tonight. And yeah, there's some guys that are in the portal, but you mentioned that there's not a ton of options. The portal's thinning a little bit. I think a lot of I mean, there's a lot of moves that other teams have already made. I just
Yeah.
how how doom and gloom is this, Brody? How is this the we're in the cellar and it's just it can't get much lower? Is there room to get out of the cellar? Where are we right now?
It can get lower. Because right now, I think we both agree that they need a big and Sam Godwin, I think, is a very solid player, but best case scenario, he's not your starting big next season. I think we would both agree on that. And in the big man market, it's just kind of starting to get thin. They have Ugana Onyenso from Kentucky, who visited Oklahoma out of high school. Oklahoma's been in contact with him. It's been Oklahoma, Alabama, and Louisville, but they're competing with Alabama and Louisville. So if you miss out on him, all of a sudden the next big you can get is someone who probably at best would be split in time with Sam Godwin. So if they miss on Yenzo, it'll get worse. And guard position wise, Jordan Ivy Curry, who committed to Virginia Tech and just decommitted yesterday. Oklahoma is going to conduct a Zoom with him, tonight at the time of this recording. So he's definitely one to watch. And he scored 17 points at UTSA. Very, very solid player. Would fit the lead guard that they're looking for. But what if you miss out on him? It gets even thinner. And in my opinion, if they miss out on him, that is when you would start to go to that, rock bottom. Because then you're looking at, I mean, I don't even know. Like I don't even have a name for who they could go after that. It's just it's rough. It would get rough. And then they have a third spot to work with. So, I originally thought, okay, once kind of found out that Kaden Cooper was entering the portal, I was like, okay, you could make RJ Godfrey work a lot more now because RJ Godfrey, Clemson transfer, visited last week, but he's kind of a 4 and a 5. He wouldn't have really been good to start at the 5. But he's certainly someone who you would want to take. Now with that extra spot, it would have been like, okay, that would work. Then he commits to Georgia today. So, and another spot is interesting, but I just think it's probably like you're really close. They're hanging on by a thread. It's really close before hitting that rock bottom that, I mean, I don't even know what there is to describe it to. Like maybe you're the worst team in the SEC if you miss on a couple more guys. Like I'm trying not to be too doom right now, but it's just hard to look at it any other way.
I think this is I don't know if this is really a time for sugarcoating, especially if there isn't
Yeah.
a way to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we knew how pivotal. I mean, we knew how pivotal this offseason was going to be. We know that Porter Moser has had to rebuild this roster through the portal the last 3 years. But Brody, I think in a lot of ways this is about as dire as this roster has been since Porter's landed in Norman.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one thing I want to point out is like a lot of people are going to be quick to like bash the OU NIL. Oklahoma has a solid amount of money to work with in that NIL wise. And now, a pretty decent amount. In my opinion, now you're in the situation where who are you going to throw that money at, though? Like, if you miss on the next, two top targets like Jordan Ivy Curry or you got on Yinzo, are you throwing that money at a big from, some group of like some school who didn't even play that well? Like, you're not. So, there's nothing really to do with the money that they do have now that they've missed out on so many guys. And if that keeps happening, then you're in a hole.
The next few days, the portal went on closing tonight. The next few days were already going to be pivotal to see if Oklahoma could land anybody else. But now with Kaden Cooper entering the portal, it's just, if the house wasn't on fire, now it's on fire.
Yeah.
And now you've got to hope the firefighters come and put out the fire. I guess that's the best way I can describe what's going on right now. Right?
Yeah. I don't know. It's going to take some very good firefighters to put out the fire. I mean, this fire is burning right now. So, and I don't think it's over yet. Like some people are acting like it's done, but I wouldn't go that far yet. But I think we're close to going that far. We're very close to going that far.
Well, I agree. So,
yeah.
We'll see what happens the next few days with the targets that Oklahoma still has. But Brody, you've been absolutely killing it following this portal news. Everybody that is over at OUinsider.com already knows that. Anybody watching this, if you're not a VIP member over at OUinsider.com, now is as good a time as any. Brandon and Parker have all kinds of football intel. Brody's been killing it, has been as good as anybody following the basketball portal moves. Softball postseason's about to be here. So go be a VIP member over at OUinsider.com or make sure to like and subscribe here at this YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss on a single piece of content. This has been the latest episode of In the Paint, the latest attempt to try to bring some news and info on the crumbling state of Oklahoma basketball.
Let's hope that we don't have to come on here again and make one that's even worse than this. I mean, it's trending down right now as far as our videos. It's gone from dooming to, and I don't even want to know what it would get to next.
You guys heard it. Hopefully next time you see us here in this basketball series, things are a little bit more positive. But until next time, this has been In the Paint. We'll see you next time.